Hello sports fans, it is Tuesday, February the 12th, the year 2013, and as usual, a lot to get to in the sports world, so let's get it going right now. Before we get into our top 25 of the college basketball, let's go through some scores from last night. It wasn't a big night in the sports world. February is usually a slow month in the sports world. Not a busy night, but let's go through some scores from last night. Anyway, let's start with college basketball. Let's start with our big Monday. Georgetown at home beat Marquette, and Kansas at home at Fargallon Fieldhouse beat Kansas State again. They own Kansas State. They beat them every single time they play, and Kansas ends their three-game losing streak. I don't know what happened to Kansas on their three-game losing streak, but they were back to business last night at home. I mean, they blew out Kansas State from start to finish. I don't know what happened to Kansas State that week. They lost 3 games in a row. That was an aborigine or something. I mean, I don't think we're going to see that the rest of the year. I think Kansas is back to playing good basketball now. So nice win by Kansas. And Kansas State, who's having a nice year, they have to figure out how to beat Kansas. They just cannot beat Kansas. Kansas has their number. So that was basically it in your college basketball. Not a big night in college basketball last night. NHL, same thing, light night. Toronto beat Philly. Toronto actually is playing decent hockey. The goalie did get hurt for Toronto, so keep an eye on that. He is playing well. We'll see if he's out for any extended period of time. Carolina beat the Islanders, and the Kings beat the Blues. St. Louis all of a sudden struggling. I like St. Louis's team. They got off to a fast start, really struggling the last week or so, so not playing good hockey at all. Over to your NBA, the Clippers beat Philadelphia. With Griffin and Paul back in the lineup, the Clippers are a different team, obviously. Clippers looked really good the last few games. The Nets had a nice win in Indiana in overtime. I got on the Nets yesterday. They had a nice win in Indiana. Indiana's been playing really good ball, really good home team. Darren Williams for the Nets didn't even play last night. The Nets win in overtime. They rally at the end. They're down 4 points with about a minute to go in regulation. They come back and tie, send the game into overtime, and the Nets really dominated in overtime. So nice job by the Nets winning in Indiana. Now, the Nets cannot fall on their face the next game when they play Denver. Go out there and have a couple good games against some decent teams. It looks like Williams won't play the next game either. He's got all sorts of injuries, but I did like what the Nets did last night. Nice win in Indiana. The Spurs continue their winning ways. They went into Chicago and beat the Bulls. No Duncan, no Ginobili, no Parker. They go into Chicago and beat the Bulls. I mean, I know the Bulls are banged up too. No Rose, Noah's banged up, but still. No Duncan, no Ginobili, no Parker. You still win on the road against a good Bull team. Unbelievable job by the Spurs. Atlanta goes into Dallas and beats the Mavericks. The Mavericks are really struggling. What are they, like 7 games under 500 now? They're all growing beards on the Maverick team until they get to 500. I'll tell you what, they keep playing like this, their beards are going to be down to the floor. The Mavericks really struggling this year. And Charlotte beats Boston. Very big surprise. Boston was on a roll since they lost Rondo. They had won like 7 in a row, beat some really good teams. And Charlotte gets them last night of all teams. So Charlotte beats Boston last night at Charlotte. Like I said, very light night last night in the sports world. Not too much going on. All right, without further ado, let's get to our college basketball. Every Tuesday we go through our college basketball. Only got about a month left of college basketball before we're into the tournament, so it's getting down to the nitty-gritty now. Teams, who are on the bubble have to make their move. All right, here's some teams who are on the bubble right now that have to start playing better basketball if they expect to get into the tournament. Let's go through a few of those real quick. UMass, LaSalle, Charlotte, and Temple, all in the same conference. They all are on the bubble. One of these teams has to step up and play some good basketball. They're all on the bubble. Also, Xavier from that conference as well. Xavier, who's always a perennial tournament team, they're really struggling this year. So those 5 teams, really keep an eye on those teams, and a lot of them are going to be playing each other as well. Maryland and Florida State out of the ACC, they're both on the bubble. Baylor, they're on the bubble, although I do like the Baylor team. They're on the bubble. I would say they might be in right now, but a little shaky. So Baylor's got to put some wins together. In the Big East, St. John's and Villanova, they're definitely on the bubble. They really have to string together some wins. Clearly on the bubble. Illinois has responded, though, recently. I mean, Illinois beat Indiana, and then they went to Minnesota and beat Minnesota. So Illinois is starting to respond. I still put them as a bubble team, though. Minnesota, 5-6 in the conference. They're a bubble team. You don't want to start going under 500 in the conference. Central Florida, Southern Miss, definitely bubble teams. Indiana State, same thing. In the Pac-12, Cal, Stanford, Colorado, all bubble teams. In your Southeastern Conference, Alabama and Arkansas bubble teams. And then out west, BYU and Santa Clara, I would say, are bubble teams as well. So those are teams that I would say are on the bubble right now that have to start playing well, have to start stringing some wins together. Here's some teams just out of the top 25 that I think are in the tournament right now, but you don't want to slip up too badly. You don't want to lose 3-4 games in a row at this position because you could go from in to out very quickly. Here's some teams just out of the top 25 that I think are in the tournament. Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Belmont, Wichita State, Virginia, UNLV, UCLA, Akron, NC State, St. Louis, Virginia Commonwealth, Louisiana Tech, San Diego State, Creighton, St. Mary's, Missouri, and Cincinnati. Those teams are just outside the top 25. They can't slip up though. They're in a precarious position there, outside the top 25. They're not on the bubble yet, but you lose 1 or 2 games, you could go from in to out very quickly. All right, let's get to our top 25 in college basketball. The new top 25 is out. Let's get to it right now. 25-1. Here we go. Number 25, the Kentucky Wildcats back in the top 25. They were out of it for a good portion of the year. If you remember, they started off in like the top 5, which was ridiculous. That's why preseason polls don't mean anything. Kentucky was in like the top 5 in the preseason polls. They weren't that good with all these freshmen. These freshmen weren't as good as the freshmen they had a couple years ago. No way in the world. Kentucky has gotten back into the top 25. They are 17-6. They sit at the 25 position. Number 24, Colorado State at 19-4. Colorado State's in the top 25? What in the world is going on here? The Colorado State Rams? I mean, they are building a nice home court advantage there. They had a long winning streak out there at Colorado State. So really tremendous job by Colorado State in the top 25 of college basketball. Unbelievable. Number 23, Oregon, they're 19-5. They have slipped a little bit since they lost one of their guards to an injury. Hopefully he gets back before the season is over because he is a big difference maker on the team. Need to have him back. Since he went out, they kind of have slipped overall. Nice job by Oregon, though. Number 22, Memphis, 20-3. It seems Memphis is good every single year. Of course, they were a lot better with Calipari. They were in your top 5 every year with Calipari. They're still a solid team. They're 20-3, ranked 22 now. Number 21, Notre Dame at 19-5, off their 5 overtime win against Louisville over the weekend. Nobody does a better job than Bray at Notre Dame. He gets the most out of his players. You look at Notre Dame's roster and you're like, this is not a great team. This is not a very talented team. You look at their record, they're 19-5. They're beating Louisville. Gets the most out of his players. Really good coach, Bray. Number 20, Wisconsin. They are 17-7. That's Bo Ryan's team. This is a team you don't want to play in the tournament. They have a style you do not want to play. Believe me, they just beat Michigan, who was previously number 1 over the weekend. They have a style that just bothers everyone. It's just a unique style. Bo Ryan's a really good coach. Wisconsin plays a style no one wants to play. Number 19, New Mexico. They are 20-4, one of the best home courts in all of college basketball. I keep saying it week after week. Impossible place to play, the Pit in Albuquerque. So they're doing a nice job. That's Steve Alford's team. Number 18, Marquette. They are 17-6. You know, it's funny, Marquette, you just wonder how Marquette gets players. I mean, I know they have a good tradition of basketball in Marquette going back to the McGuire days, but you think the teams they're competing against in the Big East, the powerhouses, you wonder how they get players to compete, and they do it every single year. They're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Unbelievable job by Marquette that they're this high at 17-6. Ranked number 18. Number 17, Oklahoma State. They're 17-5, playing really good basketball. If you remember, they went into Kansas and beat Kansas about a week ago. That's not easy to do. Oklahoma State playing some really good ball lately. They could be doing some things, and they play at historic Gallagher-Iba Arena. Very historic arena. When there's a big game, that place is electric. All right, number 16, Pitt. They're 20-5. Jamie Dixon squeezes every ounce of everything he can get out of his players. He squeezes every basketball inch out of these guys. Every year, Pitt fights you tooth and nail. They're a very gritty, gutty defensive team. Sometimes they have trouble scoring. They go long droughts without scoring. That hurts them in the tournament sometimes. Jamie Dixon has been close to getting to the Final Four a few years, got to the Final 8. Their offense seems to let them down. Hopefully one day he will get to the Final Four because he is a tremendous coach. He puts his heart and soul into it, squeezes everything out of his Pitt team all the time. Number 15, Georgetown. They are 18-4. Georgetown's been ranked basically 15 to 20 the whole year. They're a solid team. We'll see if they can get to, an upper echelon team. A solid team, though, Georgetown. Number 14, Kansas. They're 20-4. They had that awful 3-game losing streak where they lost at home to Oklahoma State. Then they lost at Oklahoma, and inexplicably, they lost at TCU. TCU can't beat anyone. TCU got drubbed by 40 against Oklahoma last night, yet TCU somehow beat Kansas. Kansas kind of washed a lot of that away last night. They beat Kansas State at home. I think they'll be back to playing, Kansas ball now. I think they'll be playing good ball the rest of the year. So they are 14 at 20-4, but they have dipped. They were in the top 5 about a week ago. Number 13, Ohio State. They're 17-6. They've dipped a little bit too. They were close to your top 5, earlier in the year. They just lost badly to Indiana at home. I like to see a little more from Ohio State. I thought they'd be a little better than this. Listen, they're still a solid team. I like them. I thought they'd be a little better. Number 12, Louisville. They're 19-5. This is coming off their just atrocious 5-overtime loss to Notre Dame. A game they had salted away in regulation. I mean, they let the game slip away. Rick Pitino was going crazy on the sideline, throwing his suit jacket off. We know Pitino's a great coach. Louisville's always a good tournament team. They let that one slip away against Notre Dame, though. Number 11, Butler, 20-4. I mean, Butler, here we go again with Butler. I mean, Butler again is ranked 11th. It's unbelievable. Butler. I mean, Butler's 20-4. How could you not like Butler? Is there anyone out there that dislikes Butler? How is that possible? Number 10, Kansas State. They will drop after the loss last night. They're 19-5. Overall, Bruce Weber's done a tremendous job with this team. We know Bruce Weber can coach. Took Illinois to a Final Four. We know he can coach. Kansas State, though, as I said, have to find a way to beat Kansas one of these years. They keep losing to Kansas year after year, twice a year. Kansas State, you got to beat Kansas. Number 9, you have Arizona, 20-3. Every time I watch Arizona, the game's close, and they pull it out at the end. I've watched about 5-6 games this year, start to finish with Arizona. They've been losing, and every one of them came back at the end to win. So Arizona has a knack of pulling these games out at the end. They play at the McHale Center, which is a great arena out there in Tucson. So Arizona doing an overall nice job pulling out the close games, ranked number 9. Number 8, Michigan State, Tom Izzo's boys, 20-4. Tom Izzo. Is there a better coach in college basketball than Tom Izzo? I mean, every year he's got his teams tournament ready. They play everyone. They peak at the right time. You're going to look up. They're going to be in your Final 8 making a run for the Final 4. They do it every single year. No matter what guys they lose, they're back in the Final 8 every single year. This year should be no different. Number 7, Florida. They're 19-3. I was shocked Florida got pasted in Arkansas last week. Florida was really playing some good ball. They won a long winning streak, and they got blown out by Arkansas. I don't know what happened there. That game was over from start to finish. They did rebound over the weekend with a win. I like Florida. I think they're a solid team. Definite threat to make the Final Four. Number 6, Syracuse, 20-3. They get 30,000 strong at the Carrier Dome. Jim Boeheim doing it again. Syracuse is a really, really good team. Definitely could win it all. Really nice team, Syracuse, and their fans are just tremendous. 30,000 a game for a college basketball game. Unreal. Number 5, Gonzaga, 23-2. Gonzaga's number 5. I mean, this is Gonzaga's best chance to get to a Final Four. They've had some really good teams the last decade. This could be their best chance to get to a Final Four. They're like Butler. How could you dislike Gonzaga? How could you dislike Gonzaga, what they've accomplished out there in Spokane, Washington? How could you? I don't think you can. I mean, so Gonzaga, 23-2, tremendous job by them. Number 4, Michigan, 21-3. That's Beeline's club. I like the way Michigan plays. Michigan, of course, got clipped over the weekend by Wisconsin. Just a horrible loss. I mean, Michigan's leading by 3. Wisconsin hits a half-court three-pointer with basically no time left to send it in overtime, and then Wisconsin beats them in overtime. Michigan's got to be scratching their heads days later. How in the world did we lose that game? So that was a tough loss. Overall, though, Michigan's a solid team. Number 3, Miami of Florida, 19-3, undefeated in the ACC. Miami of Florida basketball. Not football, folks. Basketball. 19-3, ranked 3, undefeated in the ACC. They're going to win the ACC regular title. Miami's on a roll. Jim Laranaga's doing a coach of a lifetime job here. I mean, we know he was a great coach at George Mason. He got George Mason to a Final Four. He's doing it in Miami. This is an impossible place to win in college basketball. They're number 3. This is the same conference with Duke and North Carolina, NC State. I mean, these are basketball powerhouses. Miami's doing it this year. Tremendous job by Laranaga. Laranaga's coach of the year. I mean, I don't follow these awards too closely. Whatever they give out, he's got to get it. Number 2, Duke. They're 21-2. They definitely are a better team with Kelly. Hopefully he'll be back before the season is over. Duke has responded the last few games, played well. They bombed NC State after NC State got them earlier in the year. I thought Duke was actually going to go to number 1, but they go to 2 because number 1 stays Indiana. Indiana stays number 1. I was really surprised by this considering they lost to Illinois. Very rarely do you see a team lose and stay number 1 in the next week's polls. But so many teams lost behind them, and I guess Duke didn't look so impressive against Boston College either. They won by 1 point over a bad Boston College team. I mean, they did get the win. It was a road game, but they didn't look overly impressive in that game, especially since they had just pasted NC State. You thought they'd come back and bomb Boston College. They didn't. So maybe that's the reason Indiana State's won. Listen, it's all semantics. I mean, what's the difference? 1-2, does it really matter at this stage of the game? Only time it matters when you're 1-2 is at the end of the year, the last poll that's up after the championship game. Who won the title game? That's the only difference here. So Indiana stays 1. They have a really solid team, Indiana. Very deep team. Definite threat to win it all. I didn't like the way they lost to Illinois, though. They really blew that game. A couple notes I wanted to touch on. A couple people have asked me, they wanted to go on some college road trips to some of these basketball arenas. They told me to throw out some of the ones I really like. Here's about 10 of them that I say you have to put on your bucket list. And I don't mean to disrespect anyone I'm not going to mention here. I mean, there's more than 10, obviously. I mean, if I don't mention a certain school that you went to, don't get mad at me. But here's 10 just off the top of my head that you have to get to, put on your bucket list. You want to take a road trip to a college basketball arena, here's 10 right off the top of my head. North Carolina. I mean, North Carolina Tar Heels at the Dean Smith Center, down there in Chapel Hill. I mean, the history of North Carolina basketball. I mean, Michael Jordan played there. Do I need to say any more? I mean, North Carolina is usually always a perennial power. They're struggling a little bit this year, but still. I mean, they're always a perennial power. A lot of history there. North Carolina and Chapel Hill. Kentucky and Lexington. I mean, Kentucky and Lexington, I mean, that's just basketball heaven. I mean, they just adore the Wildcats there. I mean, so you got to put Rupp Arena in Kentucky on your bucket list as well. I personally would put New Mexico and Albuquerque. Some people wouldn't. I think New Mexico has one of the best floors in all of college basketball, some of the best fans in all of college basketball. I love the Pit. The fans are electric. You put a big game there, and the fans go nuts. One of the loudest arenas in all of college basketball. I'm putting New Mexico on my list. Kansas. You've heard me say it a million times. Fog Allen Fieldhouse in Lawrence, Kansas. Singing Rock Chalk Jayhawk. Does it get any better? Kansas never loses at home. I think in their last 105 home games, they're like 103-2. Do I need to say more? Kansas and Lawrence on the list. I would put Butler, considering what Butler's done and considering the history of that place. I would put Butler on the list. A lot of people wouldn't, but they have a lot of history there. The team now, I don't consider them a mid-major. They can play with the big boys now. I would put Butler on the list. Arizona, the McHale Center out in Tucson. One of the best arenas out west. I mean, really electric environment. Go there when they're playing like UCLA. You won't regret it. Michigan State. I like Michigan State's environment too. Everyone dressed in green or white. I like Michigan State since they've moved over to this newer arena, although it's been around a few years now. I would put Michigan State on there. I mean, Syracuse. 30,000 people for a regular season college basketball game up in the Carrier Dome. Syracuse is definitely on the list. Get up to Syracuse and watch them play against Georgetown or some big game. You won't regret that trip. 30,000 strong in the Dome. I mean, come on. Duke, obviously, Cameron Indoor Stadium. I mean, the Cameron crazy sitting there right on top of the court going crazy, jumping up and down. You got to put Duke on your list. And I definitely would put Indiana. Indiana and Bloomington. I mean, Indiana is basketball like heaven, like Kentucky. You go to Kentucky, you go to Indiana, it's basketball, basketball, basketball. In order to really appreciate it, you have to go to Indiana and experience it. Bloomington Assembly Hall for a big game. Nothing better than that. I mean, Indiana is definitely on the list. So those are some of the arenas I would say. How many did I give for you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I gave you about 10 of them there. So that's 10. And listen, I don't mean to, leave out some of the other places. There's plenty of other ones. I'll touch on them, in the weeks to come. But those are 10 right off the top of my head that you have to put on your bucket list. You ever want to take a road trip to see one of these college basketball arenas? Those 10 right off the bat stand out to me. And there are others, obviously, but those 10 definitely make the trip to some of these places. I mean, it's well worth it. You won't regret it. All right, so that is your college basketball for today. Tuesday, what to watch? Let's get to it. As far as your NHL, Carolina at New Jersey, Buffalo at Ottawa, Montreal at Tampa, San Jose, Nashville, Anaheim, Chicago. That's a really nice game. Anaheim's playing good hockey. Chicago hasn't lost yet. Minnesota at Vancouver, and the Rangers at Boston. That's going to be a nasty little game. Rangers at Boston. Anytime you get New York and Boston together in anything, that should be a nice game tonight up in Boston. I mean, you don't want to tangle with the Bruins. They're a big, big team, but you don't want them to push you around either. It should be a very physical game there. As far as your NBA tonight, not great in the NBA tonight. Denver, Toronto, Portland, Miami, Oklahoma City, Utah, Phoenix, Lakers, Houston, Golden State. Not a great night in the NBA. College basketball tonight. You have a decent doubleheader. You got Michigan at Michigan State. What a big rivalry game that is. That's a tremendous game. That's must watch. And then the late game, Kentucky at Florida with the Rowdy Reptiles down there in Florida. That's also a nice environment when it's a big game. Like tonight, the Rowdy Reptiles in Gainesville, Florida will be going crazy. So those are two nice games in college basketball. So I would really focus on tonight Rangers, Boston in hockey, and I would focus on that doubleheader in college basketball. Michigan at Michigan State is to die for rivalry. You have to watch that game. And Kentucky at Florida is no slouch either. Two Southeastern schools going at it. NBA tonight a little light, so I'd focus on the college basketball and definitely keep an eye on that Ranger Bruin game. But tonight, the must-watch, without a doubt, you're going to watch one game, Michigan at Michigan State. That's the early game tonight on Super Tuesday. So that is your sports for today. You guys, thanks for tuning in. Enjoy your day today. Enjoy the sports tonight. Tomorrow we're going to do our NHL. Thursday we're going to do our NBA, and we're going to cover everything else that's going on in the sports world. You guys stay safe. Enjoy the games. I will talk to you tomorrow, Wednesday. Take care.